A metropolis thrived for a millennium without pumps or pipes. Its water supply was cleaner and more reliable than what many major cities have today. This is not a work of fiction, but a testament to ancient engineering. We live in an age of advanced technology, yet we are facing a global water crisis. By the end of this, you will understand how ancient water systems outperformed modern infrastructure and possess a blueprint for a more sustainable future. How did civilizations without computers create networks that lasted thousands of years? And what critical wisdom have we left behind in our rush toward progress? What does it truly mean for a society to be advanced? Think of a modern water treatment facility, a sprawling complex of towering concrete basins, miles of gleaming steel pipe, and a constant hum of electric pumps. It is a masterpiece of active engineering, using immense energy and sophisticated chemistry to force water into compliance. Now shift your gaze to a Roman aqueduct, its stone arches marching across a sun-drenched valley. It possesses a profound silence. There are no moving parts, no external power source, only the patient, unerring pull of gravity guiding water from a mountain spring to a distant city. This is the core paradox laid bare. Our most advanced systems are often labyrinths of complexity, demanding constant intervention. Their ancient counterparts achieved remarkable reliability through elegant simplicity. The difference is a matter of fundamental philosophy. Modern infrastructure tends to be active, fighting against nature with technology and force. Ancient systems were overwhelmingly passive, designed to work in harmony with natural principles. They saw the landscape not as an obstacle to be conquered, but as a partner in the design. A gentle slope was more valuable than a powerful pump. A protected spring was more critical than a filtration plant. This is not about the tools available, stone versus steel. It is about the wisdom applied. It asks us a difficult question. Have we, in our pursuit of overwhelming control, built systems that are inherently fragile? The aqueduct did not need electricity to function. It could not suffer a cyber attack. Its vulnerability was physical and visible, a crack in the stone, something a caretaker could see and mend. Our hidden networks fail in ways that are often invisible until it is too late. To understand how these old systems outperformed our own, we must look closer at this design wisdom, starting with the most vital ingredient they prioritized and we often neglect. That silent aqueduct in the valley holds its secret in a single, perfect line. Look at the Pont du Gard in southern France, its 3 tiers of golden stone arching gracefully over a river. It does not look like a machine. It looks like a piece of the landscape itself, a monument to patience. Yet for centuries, it was a vital artery, carrying water over 30 miles to the bustling city of Nimes. Its power source was invisible, cost nothing, and never faltered. Gravity. Ancient engineers did not just use gravity, they courted it with a mathematician's precision. They understood that water, left to its own devices, seeks the lowest point. Their genius was in creating a pathway so meticulously graded that the water would choose to flow exactly where they wanted it to go, for distances that seem impossible. To achieve this, they mastered the art of the imperceptible slope. We are not talking about steep declines. The gradient of a Roman aqueduct could be as shallow as 1 foot of drop for every 10,000 feet of distance. To put that in perspective, over a mile, the channel would descend by barely more than the length of your hand. Maintaining such a consistent, gentle descent across hills, valleys, and plains required surveying skill that borders on the mystical. Their tools were deceptively simple. The corabates, a long wooden frame with a water-level groove, allowed them to check for true horizontal over great lengths. The groma, a cross-shaped instrument with plumb lines, helped them sight straight lines across the countryside. With these basic devices, they performed feats of hydrological calculation that would challenge modern engineers without satellite guidance. Contrast this with the heartbeat of a modern city's water system. It is not the quiet pull of gravity, but the thrum of electric pumps. Enormous facilities, gulping megawatts of power, are needed to push water uphill, through treatment plants and into towering storage tanks. This represents a fundamental shift in philosophy. Where the ancients worked with Earth's most basic force, we often choose to fight against it. Every pump is a point of failure. A power outage, a mechanical breakdown, or a cyber vulnerability can bring the flow to a halt. The Roman system had a beautiful, inherent resilience. As long as the spring flowed and the channel was clear, the water moved itself. It was a perpetual motion machine designed by nature and unlocked by human understanding. This was not a mere technical choice, it was a civilizational one. Harnessing gravity meant building infrastructure that was sustainable in the deepest sense. It required no fuel, emitted no pollution, and its operational cost, once built, was essentially the care of its custodians. It embedded the water supply into the very geography of the region, creating a permanent, stable relationship between the city and its mountain source. The principle was elegantly clear: do not waste energy opposing a fundamental force. Instead, invest intelligence in aligning with it. This first principle of working with nature, rather than subduing it, powered empires. But it relied on a second, even more critical insight. What good is a perfectly engineered channel if the water it carries is not pure to begin with? The ancients had an answer, and it started not with treatment but with profound respect for the source itself. The purest water begins its journey deep within the earth, far from human interference. In the searing deserts of ancient Persia, survival depended not on conquering the arid landscape, but on listening to it, on finding a way to coax hidden groundwater across impossible distances. Their solution was the Qanat, a masterpiece of subterranean engineering that embodies a second, brilliant principle: design systems that maintain themselves. Picture a line of circular wells stretching across a barren plain, like a string of beads laid upon the sand. These are not wells for drawing water, but ventilation and access shafts, the only visible sign of the hidden river flowing beneath. The Qanat itself is a gently sloping tunnel, painstakingly dug by hand through rock and soil, often for dozens of miles. It begins high in the foothills, tapping into a mountain aquifer. Then, with a slope even more precise than a Roman aqueduct, it guides this captive water underground, all the way to a sun-parched village or a lush garden oasis at the tunnel's end. The construction was a monumental act of faith and geometry, but the true genius was in its daily operation. The Qanat is a living system. The constant, gentle flow of water through the tunnel performs a continuous, silent maintenance. It carries away loose sediment before it can accumulate and clog the passage. The cool, dark, underground environment acts as a natural shield. It drastically reduces the evaporation that plagues open canals under the desert sun, and it starves algae and bacteria of the sunlight they need to grow. This is infrastructure designed with its own longevity in mind. It requires no chemical treatments, no mechanical scrubbers. Its caretakers, the muqannis, would descend the vertical shafts periodically, not for frantic repairs, but for gentle monitoring and the rare, careful clearing of a potential blockage. They worked with the system, not on it. Now hold that image of the self-sustaining underground river in your mind and contrast it with a typical modern concrete canal under the same blazing sun. The open channel loses vast quantities of water to evaporation. Sunlight promotes algal blooms that taint the water and clog filters. Sediment settles in the slow-moving sections, requiring fleets of dredging equipment and scheduled, costly shutdowns for cleaning. Our pipes buried out of sight are not immune. Mineral scale builds up inside, constricting flow and requiring aggressive chemical or mechanical cleaning. In our quest for volume and speed, we often design waterways that actively fight against their own long-term health, creating constant, expensive problems that need technological solutions. The Qanat presents a different equation. By investing immense initial effort to work in harmony with physics and geology, the builders created a system whose operational needs were minimal. It was sustainable not just environmentally, but socially and economically, providing a reliable water source for centuries with little more than traditional knowledge and careful stewardship. This was not primitive technology, it was sophisticated biomimicry, replicating the stability and self-cleaning properties of a natural aquifer or a spring-fed stream. It asks us a profound question about our own designs. Why do we build so many systems that generate their own waste and demand constant intervention? The Qanat's lesson is clear. True resilience is not about how advanced your tools for repair are, but how seldom you need to use them. This principle of self-maintenance, however, was part of a larger, more holistic vision. The water's journey did not end at the tunnel's mouth. It flowed into a world where every single drop was accounted for, guided by a third, equally vital principle that turned scarcity into abundance. The journey of water did not end with its arrival. In the arid plains of Rajasthan, India, the answer to purification was carved directly into the earth itself. Chand Bayori is not merely a well, it is a breathtaking inverted pyramid, a geometric marvel of 3,500 narrow steps descending over 13 stories into the Earth's cool embrace. This colossal structure served a purpose far beyond storage. It was a living, breathing filtration plant. As water seeped into the vast reservoir from the surrounding ground, it passed through the very fabric of the Stepwells construction. Layers of sand, gravel, and porous limestone within the walls acted as a massive natural sieve, straining out sediments and many impurities before the water ever reached the central pool. The design itself promoted health. The enormous open surface area allowed sunlight to penetrate, its ultraviolet rays helping to reduce harmful microorganisms. The constant movement of people drawing water and the air circulating through the deep cavern provided aeration, infusing the water with oxygen, a process that further discouraged the growth of certain pathogens. This was water treatment engineered into the architecture, slow, steady, and powered by natural cycles. Half a world away, the Romans applied a similar philosophy within their aqueduct networks. Before water entered a city, it would often be channeled through a series of settling tanks. Here, the flow would slow, allowing heavier particles of silt and debris to simply fall out of suspension and settle to the bottom. In some systems, the water was then directed over cascading steps, a deliberate act of aeration that not only refreshed the water, but also helped to release dissolved gases and improve its clarity. Their goal was not sterility but wholesome clarity, achieved by working with physics and time. Now compare this to the standard of modern municipal water. Our treatment is a triumph of chemistry and speed. To ensure safety across vast, centralized networks, we rely heavily on disinfectants like chlorine. It is highly effective at eliminating dangerous biological threats, a critical public health advancement. Yet this approach can introduce its own complexities. Chlorine can react with organic matter in the water to form disinfection byproducts, some of which are associated with long-term health concerns. Furthermore, the process is entirely additive. We are putting something into the water to make it safe, whereas the ancient methods were largely subtractive, allowing natural processes to remove what was unwanted. The ancient systems sought a symbiotic purity. The sand and limestone filters of the stepwell improved the water without introducing foreign substances. The aeration cascades revitalized it. These methods created water that was not just safe for human consumption, but also supported the local ecosystem. Fish and aquatic plants could thrive in those settled, aerated basins, completing a miniature, self-regulating environment. Our chemical treatments, by necessity, often create water that is biologically inert, a lifeless medium safe for pipes and human digestion, but not for a living stream. This contrast highlights a third powerful principle: leverage natural processes for purification. The ancients did not see water as an inert substance to be dominated, but as a living element to be guided and nurtured. They used time, gravity, sunlight, and natural materials as their tools, creating systems that cleaned water while also blending seamlessly into and even enhancing the environment. This was a holistic vision of health for the people and the land. But achieving this level of symbiotic purity required more than clever engineering. It demanded a relationship with water that was fundamentally different from our own. It required a culture that saw every drop not as a commodity but as a sacred trust. Chand Bayori was never just a source of water, it was a sanctuary. On its steps the community gathered, escaping the searing heat in its cool depths. Pilgrims performed rituals and travelers found respite. The water was the reason for its existence, but the life that swirled around it was its true purpose. This reveals a fourth transformative principle. Ancient water systems were masterpieces of multifunctional design, woven into the daily rhythm of community life. The Roman bathhouse was another grand example. More than a place to get clean, it was a social nucleus, a center for business, exercise, and conversation. The aqueduct fed the baths fed the city's spirit. This integration created a powerful, self-reinforcing cycle. Because the structure was vital to social and cultural life, the community felt a deep sense of ownership and responsibility for it. Maintenance was not an abstract civic duty. It was the preservation of a cherished communal space. The caretaker of the stepwell or the overseer of the aqueduct held a respected role because they safeguarded a pillar of the community's identity. Now consider the journey of water in a modern city. For most, it is a mystery. It arrives through a hidden labyrinth of pipes buried under streets, processed in distant, fenced-off facilities that are often labeled as industrial zones. The average person's relationship with their water is reduced to a faucet and a monthly bill. This physical and psychological distance has a profound consequence. It severs the vital link between the community and its most critical resource. When infrastructure is invisible, public stewardship dwindles. Out of sight becomes tragically out of mind. We are not asked to care for the system, only to consume its product. The ancient model understood something we have largely forgotten. Infrastructure succeeds not when it is merely efficient, but when it is beloved. When a water source also serves as a cooling refuge, a spiritual site, or a social hub, its value multiplies in the hearts of the people. This emotional investment translates directly into longevity. A community will fight to protect and maintain a place that holds its memories and meetings. They will notice a crack in the stone, a change in the water's clarity, because they are present, because they have a relationship with the structure itself. Our modern approach prioritizes efficiency and separation, often relegating water infrastructure to the realm of the purely utilitarian and the professionally managed. But in doing so, we lose that powerful layer of communal guardianship. The lesson here is architectural, but it is also deeply human. The most resilient systems are those that are not just used by a community, but are lived in and cherished by it. They serve the body and the spirit, becoming inseparable from the culture itself. This holistic vision of water as the center of community life leads us to the final and perhaps most challenging contrast. How did these societies manage the water not just within their grand structures, but across their entire landscapes from the mountains to the farms? Their answer forms the last pillar of their enduring success. The desert near Qanat in Iran holds a secret older than empires. Beneath the sun-baked earth, a network of Qanats has been whispering a continuous flow of water for nearly 3,000 years. This is not an archaeological relic. It is a living, working system that has outlasted the rise and fall of dynasties, wars, and shifting climates. It stands as the ultimate testament to a fifth defining principle. Build for permanence, embedding resilience into the very DNA of the system. The Qanats of Qanat achieved this through a profound understanding of sustainability. They tap into groundwater recharged by distant mountains, a renewable cycle as old as the rain. They have no moving parts, nothing to rust, break, or require imported fuel. Their structure is elegantly repairable with the very earth and stone through which they were dug, materials always at hand. The caretakers, generation after generation, possess the knowledge to maintain them with simple tools. This is infrastructure designed with a timeline measured in millennia, not in election cycles or corporate balance sheets. Now, hold that 3,000-year timeline in your mind and look at the nervous system of a modern metropolis. Our centralized water systems are engineering marvels, but their resilience is built on a foundation of constant inputs. They depend utterly on non-renewable energy to power massive pumps and treatment plants. They rely on complex global supply chains for everything from replacement pumps to the chemicals used for purification. This creates a web of hidden vulnerabilities. A prolonged blackout can silence the pumps. A cyber attack could disrupt the delicate controls of a treatment facility. A geopolitical conflict or a logistical breakdown could delay critical parts or chemicals for months. We have built systems of astonishing efficiency, but their strength is conditional, dependent on a fragile network of external support that the ancient engineers would never have recognized. The contrast in planning horizons is stark. The builders of Qanat dug their tunnels with their great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren in mind. They invested immense labor upfront to create a gift for the future, a system that would ask for little but give endlessly. Our modern planning is often shackled to much shorter timelines, the decades of a bond issue, the years of a political term, the quarters of a financial report. This difference in perspective changes everything about how we build. It determines the materials we choose, the redundancies we include, and the very philosophy of maintenance. The ancient approach asks a difficult, essential question of us today. Are we constructing legacies or merely installing temporary solutions? Are we building for our grandchildren or just for the next fiscal quarter? The silent water of Qanat, flowing uninterrupted since the time of the ancient Persians, suggests that true advancement is not about how complex we can make things, but how wisely we can simplify them for the long haul. Rome's mastery of water was not a single aqueduct, but a symphony of 11. For over 5 centuries, this network grew, a logistical marvel that channeled over 1 million cubic meters of water into the city every single day. To visualize that, picture a steady river flowing through the urban heart, enough to fill 400 Olympic swimming pools from dawn until dusk. This was not a chaotic flood, but a meticulously managed torrent. The journey began at distant, protected springs in the surrounding hills, sources chosen for their purity and reliable flow. From there, the real work of genius commenced. Surveyors, using their simple but effective tools, plotted a course across miles of challenging terrain. When they met a valley, they built soaring arches. When they encountered a hill, they tunneled straight through it. The channel itself was a masterpiece of practical craftsmanship, lined with a special, waterproof mortar called opus signinum. This mixture of crushed pottery and lime created a remarkably durable and impermeable seal, ensuring that every precious drop reached its destination. But the true brilliance of the system was revealed inside the city walls. The water did not simply pour into a reservoir and stop. It entered a complex distribution network that would feel familiar in its ambition to any modern urban planner. From the main castellum or distribution tank, A hierarchy of lead pipes carried water throughout the city. The primary pipes fed secondary lines, which in turn supplied public bathhouses, latrines, and the estates of the wealthy. Most importantly, they fed a vast network of public fountains. Historians estimate there were over 1,300 of these fountains scattered across Rome's neighborhoods. This was the cornerstone of equitable access. While the rich could pay for private taps, every citizen, regardless of wealth, had a right to fresh water from a public source no more than a short walk from their home. The Romans even developed an early form of water meter, a calibrated bronze nozzle that would limit the flow to private properties based on a paid license, a clear effort to manage demand. The result was a staggering per capita water availability. At its peak, each Roman citizen had access to an estimated 1,200 liters of water per day. Compare that to the reality in many modern cities today. Cape Town, during its recent severe crisis, rationed residents to just 50 liters per person daily. Even cities not in crisis like Barcelona or Mexico City often provide less than 300 liters per capita. This comparison is not to suggest ancient Rome was a utopia, but to highlight a profound logistical achievement. They built a system that delivered abundance through meticulous management and a foundational commitment to public access. It was a feat of civil engineering that transformed water from a basic need into an engine of urban life, supporting public health, social ritual, and economic activity on a scale that would not be seen again for over 1,000 years. This network stands as a timeless case study, proving that the true measure of an advanced society is not just what it can build, but how wisely it shares what it brings forth. The staggering scale of Roman water delivery reveals a civilization that mastered the art of abundance. Yet another desert people, in a landscape even more unforgiving, perfected the science of conservation. Hidden within the rose-red cliffs of southern Jordan, the ancient city of Petra stands as a monument to this opposite, yet equally brilliant philosophy. Here, in a deep canyon surrounded by sheer rock faces and baked by an unrelenting sun, the Nabateans did not just survive, they thrived. They transformed a seasonal riverbed into a permanent oasis, not by conquering the desert, but by becoming intimate students of its every mood. Their genius lay in a single, terrifying source, the desert flash flood. Where others saw only destructive chaos, the Nabateans saw opportunity. They understood that the very aridity that defined their home was punctuated by brief, violent bursts of life-giving water. Their entire hydraulic civilization was built to catch, tame, and hoard these fleeting torrents. The system began high in the surrounding hills, far from the city's carved facades. They constructed a series of cleverly placed diversion dams and catchment basins designed to intercept the first, sediment-laden rush of a storm. These structures would slow the flood's fury, allowing heavier debris to drop out before the water was channeled into the heart of Petra. The city itself was a meticulously engineered watershed. The Nabateans carved channels into the cliff sides and paved the main street, the Sick, turning the entire canyon into a funnel. When the rains came, water from hundreds of acres of rock plateau would roar through this narrow gorge, but instead of destroying the city, it was guided. Subterranean ceramic pipes, channels cut into the rock, and surface conduits directed the floodwaters into a vast network of underground cisterns and large, open reservoirs. They harvested water on a colossal scale. Some cisterns could hold millions of liters, enough to sustain the population of tens of thousands through years of drought. This was not a passive system, it was an active, city-wide trap for rainwater, a machine built from stone and intuition. Now, hold that image of Petra actively embracing the flood and contrast it with the standard modern approach to urban water. We often treat stormwater as a nuisance, a waste product to be removed as quickly as possible. We pave over natural ground, creating impermeable surfaces that cannot absorb rain. Then we build massive underground pipes and concrete channels to rush this water away from our cities and into rivers or the sea as fast as engineering allows. This solves an immediate flooding problem but creates two greater crises downstream. First, it deprives the local aquifer of crucial recharge, deepening water scarcity. Second, it simply moves the flood risk to another community, often with greater volume and speed. The Nabateans faced the same water, but with a transformative mindset. They asked not how to get rid of it, but how to keep it. Every drop that fell on their territory was considered an asset to be captured and stored. Their ceramic pipes and sealed cisterns minimized evaporation, their dams managed sediment, and their distribution channels brought this harvested bounty to gardens, homes, and even ritual baths. Petra's lesson is one of profound adaptation. They did not wish for a different climate or a Roman-style aqueduct from distant springs. They developed a hyper-local solution, a symbiotic relationship with the desert's own violent hydrology. Their system was advanced because it was perfectly, intricately tailored to its specific place on Earth. It asks us a pressing question for our own era of climate uncertainty. Are we building cities that fight against their local environment, or can we learn to design like the Nabateans as part of it? Petra's mastery of the desert flash flood reveals a civilization that listened to its environment. Yet another empire in the dense tropical forests of Southeast Asia achieved something even more monumental. They did not just capture water, they orchestrated it on a scale that dwarfs most modern cities. The sprawling metropolis of Angkor was not built around water, it was built from water. Its lifeblood was a network of engineering so vast it transformed the landscape itself. At the heart of this hydraulic empire were the barrays, colossal rectangular reservoirs that still take your breath away. The largest, the West Barray, is an artificial lake 8 kilometers long and 2.2 kilometers wide, holding over 50 million cubic meters of water. To build it, armies of laborers moved earth on a scale that rivals the Great Pyramids, constructing massive earthen dikes to contain this inland sea. But the barrays were not isolated monuments. They were the anchors of a capillary-like system of canals, moats, and channels that extended for hundreds of square kilometers, connecting temples, rice paddies, and residential districts into a single, integrated organism. This was a machine built from mud, water, and sublime intelligence, designed to solve the region's most pressing challenge, a climate of extreme opposites. For months, monsoon rains would deluge the land. Then, a long, punishing dry season would follow. Angkor's engineers refused to accept this cycle as a hardship. Instead, they re-engineered the entire terrain to manage both surplus and scarcity within one unified system. During the violent wet season, the canals and moats would channel the excess rainwater away from urban centers, preventing catastrophic flooding. This diverted water was then captured and stored in the giant barrays, banking it like a liquid savings account. When the dry season arrived and the land began to crack under the sun, the system would reverse. Gates and channels were opened, releasing the stored water from the barrays back into the network of canals. This steady, controlled outflow transformed the surrounding plains into a vast, fertile oasis. It enabled intensive, year-round rice cultivation, supporting a population that scholars estimate may have approached 1 million people at its peak. This was not just farming, it was a form of landscape-scale alchemy, turning unpredictable rainfall into reliable agricultural wealth. Now hold that image of a single, unified water cycle in your mind. In most modern megacities, we break water management into separate, isolated departments. Stormwater engineers work to get rid of rain as fast as possible. Wastewater teams focus on treating what goes down our drains. Drinking water utilities manage a separate, pristine supply. These systems often work at cross purposes, fighting against the natural flow rather than working with it. Angkor's vision was the opposite. their engineers saw stormwater, irrigation water, and even ceremonial water as part of one continuous, manageable loop. The moats around temples like Angkor Wat were not just for defense or beauty, they were functional reservoirs and part of the cooling microclimate. The canals moved goods, people, and water simultaneously. This holistic thinking created a resilient symbiosis between the city and its environment, a resilience that sustained one of the world's largest pre-industrial urban complexes for centuries. Today, we are confronting the limits of our fragmented approach. In response, a new concept is emerging in urban planning, one that echoes the ancient Khmer genius, the sponge city. The idea is to design urban landscapes to absorb, clean, and reuse rainwater where it falls, using permeable pavements, green roofs, and constructed wetlands. It is a modern attempt to see the urban water cycle as a single system, just as Angkor did. The silent, algae-covered waters of the West Barre hold a quiet challenge for us. Can we relearn how to build cities that do not just consume water, but thoughtfully, elegantly participate in its eternal cycle? Beneath the streets of a typical modern metropolis, a quiet hemorrhage is taking place. It is not a crisis of scarcity at the source, but one of sheer waste within the delivery system itself. In countless cities worldwide, between 20 and 40% of all treated, potable water simply disappears. It seeps out through cracks in aging pipes, joints that have corroded, and mains that have been neglected for decades. This means that for every 10 gallons of water purified at great energy cost, up to 4 gallons never reach a single tap. They vanish into the ground, a staggering loss of a critical resource that represents both a hydrological and an economic failure. The energy footprint of this cycle is equally immense. Modern water and wastewater systems are among the largest consumers of municipal electricity, often accounting for 30 to 40% of a city's total power bill. Think of the energy required to pump that water from its source, often uphill, through hundreds of miles of pipe, then to treat it to drinking standards with energy-intensive processes, only to pump it again into storage towers. And after it is used, more energy is required to pump the wastewater to treatment plants, where another round of chemical and mechanical processes demands further power. This creates a vicious, costly loop where saving water directly translates to saving enormous amounts of energy, a connection our centralized, pumped systems make unavoidable. This vulnerability extends beyond mere waste. Our infrastructure is increasingly stressed by the very climate it helped us ignore. Designed for a stable, predictable range of conditions, concrete storm drains are overwhelmed by the intensified downpours of a changing climate, leading to destructive urban flooding. Prolonged droughts strain reservoirs and aquifers to their limits. A severe heatwave can buckle roads and warp rail lines, but it also increases demand for water and electricity simultaneously, pushing the grid and the water pumps to the brink. Ancient systems often embedded resilience to local extremes directly into their design. Petra was built for flash floods. Angkor's barrays were designed to capture monsoon fury and release it slowly. The Qanat underground was insulated from surface heat and evaporation. They planned for the worst their environment could offer, making it a core part of the system's function, not an external threat. This contrast is not meant to vilify modern engineering, which brings us unparalleled public health and convenience. It is to highlight a systemic issue rooted in short-term thinking and deferred maintenance. We have built astonishingly efficient systems on paper, but we have often failed to invest in their long-term stewardship. The political and economic cycles that fund infrastructure favor ribbon cuttings over the less glamorous, continuous work of upkeep. We replace only when something breaks catastrophically, rather than renewing proactively. The result is that our most advanced technology is failing in the most basic area where ancient systems excelled: reliability through durable design and dedicated care. The Roman aqueduct, once built, needed only clear channels and sound masonry to function for centuries. Our networks need constant electricity, chemical supplies, computer controls, and emergency repairs for leaks we often cannot even locate. This invites a difficult but essential reflection. Has our pursuit of maximum efficiency and convenience inadvertently created maximum fragility? The answer may lie not in abandoning our technology, but in reconsidering its foundational philosophy. The silent endurance of these ancient systems was not an accident of time, but a deliberate choice etched into their very substance. Look closely at the mortar holding together the stones of a Roman aqueduct. It is not ordinary cement. The Romans discovered that by mixing lime with a fine, volcanic ash called pozzolana, they created a magical compound, a concrete that could not only harden underwater but actually grew stronger with the centuries. This material was a form of alchemy, turning local geology into eternal infrastructure. The aqueducts, harbors, and foundations built with it became more than structures. They became geological features, fused with the landscape they served. Similarly, the builders of the Qanat did not import high-tech materials from afar. They lined their precious underground tunnels with locally fired clay tiles or with stones gathered from the very earth they were excavating. These were humble, accessible materials. Their genius was in understanding how to use them perfectly. When a section needed repair, the knowledge and the resources were right there. A village craftsman trained in the tradition could mend a cracked tile with a new one from the local kiln. The system was designed to be maintained by the community it sustained, using the land's own bounty. This principle of material wisdom created a beautiful, closed loop of resilience. The infrastructure was made from the place for the place and could be fixed by the place. It embedded permanence into everyday practice. Now, shift your gaze to the arteries of a modern city. The pipes buried beneath our streets are engineering marvels of a different kind. We rely on materials like steel, ductile iron, and PVC plastic. They are strong, lightweight, and perfect for rapid, large-scale installation. But each has a hidden lifespan and a hidden vulnerability. Steel and iron corrode over time, reacting with water and soil. We fight this with protective linings and cathodic protection systems, which themselves require monitoring and energy. PVC, while resistant to corrosion, can become brittle with age and exposure to certain elements. The more profound issue, however, lies in their origins and their failure. These materials are products of a globalized industrial system. The steel requires vast mining operations, smelters, and mills. The PVC derives from petrochemical plants. When a major water main bursts, the replacement section is not sourced from a local quarry or a village kiln. It is ordered from a specialized manufacturer, possibly on another continent, and shipped through complex logistics chains. This creates a critical vulnerability. The system's longevity is tied not to local skill and local resources, but to the stability of global trade and fossil fuel availability. The ancient approach asked a simple question: how can we build something that lasts as long as possible with what we have right here? The modern mindset often asks, how can we build something that works well enough as quickly and cheaply as possible for now? This divergence in priorities is written in the timelines. The Roman concrete in the harbor of Caesarea still sits solidly beneath the Mediterranean waves after 2,000 years. Many of the pipes laid under American and European cities in the early 20th century are now reaching or have exceeded their intended century of service, resulting in an epidemic of leaks and breaks. We are engaged in a constant, costly game of catch-up, replacing entire networks that our ancestors would have built once for the ages. This is not merely a difference in technology, but a difference in philosophy. The ancient builders were monument makers thinking in generations. They invested immense labor upfront to create a legacy. We are often installers thinking in project cycles and budget years, prioritizing initial speed and lower cost over multi-generational endurance. The quiet lesson from the pozzolana mortar and the clay tile is one of profound patience. True sustainability is not just about what a system does, but what it is made of and who holds the knowledge to keep it alive. This philosophy of working with local materials reveals a deeper truth about these ancient systems. They were not merely passive users of the landscape, they were active cultivators of ecological health. The waterworks of the past understood a principle we are only now relearning, that true infrastructure should give back more than it takes. Consider the humble Qanat, that underground river flowing silently beneath the Persian desert. Its presence did more than deliver water to a single village. Every vertical access shaft dug to maintain the tunnel became a point of life. Moisture would seep from these shafts, creating a line of damp soil in the arid ground. Along this line, date palms, fruit trees, and gardens would flourish. A Qanat did not just transport water, it painted a stripe of green across the brown desert, stitching together a chain of micro-oases that supported agriculture, shaded travelers, and provided habitat for birds and insects. The system created biodiversity simply by existing, turning a lifeline for people into a sanctuary for nature. In the Stepwells of India, the purpose was equally profound. Chand Bayori was a giant funnel pointed at the earth. During the rare, heavy monsoon rains, the vast stepped basin would capture torrents of runoff that would otherwise have eroded the land and vanished. Instead, the water was held, allowing it to slowly percolate down through the well's carefully constructed layers and into the deep aquifer below. This was not just water storage, it was active groundwater recharge. The stepwell was a battery for the earth itself, banking water in the wet season to sustain the surrounding water table during the long, dry months. It strengthened the very hydrological system it depended upon, a perfect circle of reciprocity. Even the Romans, masters of imperial-scale engineering, wove ecological thinking into their aqueducts. At the end of many aqueduct lines, before water entered the city's distribution tanks, it would often flow through large, serene fish ponds. These were not for aquaculture in the modern sense, they were living filters. As the water passed through these ponds, fish and aquatic plants would help clarify it further, consuming organic matter and algae. The Romans were leveraging an entire ecosystem as the final stage of purification, creating water that was clean, aerated, and alive. The infrastructure and the environment were partners in a single, integrated process. Now hold that image of the fish pond and the desert oasis in your mind, and look at the typical footprint of modern water management. To build a massive dam for hydropower and irrigation, we often flood vast valleys, submerging forests, farmland, and communities, drastically altering river ecosystems for hundreds of miles downstream. To control flooding, we straighten and line rivers with concrete, turning living waterways into sterile drainage ditches that cannot support fish or filter pollutants. Our treatment plants produce clean drinking water, but they also generate chemical sludge and nutrient-rich effluent that, if not managed perfectly, can pollute rivers and cause algal blooms. Too often, our approach is linear and extractive. We identify a resource, build a system to capture and process it, and treat the environmental consequences as separate problems to be solved later, if at all. The ancient model operated on a different logic, one of symbiosis. Their systems were designed to be woven into the ecological fabric, creating benefits that rippled far beyond the immediate human need. The Qanat made the desert bloom, the stepwell recharged the aquifer, the aqueduct pond nurtured aquatic life. They asked a simple, transformative question of their designs: how can this structure also heal the land? This is a form of intelligence we might call ecological engineering, where the measure of success is not just efficiency, but the health of the entire watershed. For them, infrastructure was not an imposition on nature, it was a collaboration with it. The lesson for our time is stark and vital. We possess far more powerful tools, but we have neglected this foundational wisdom. Can we shift our ambition from merely building systems that minimize harm to designing those that actively regenerate the world they touch? The answer may determine not just the reliability of our water, but the vitality of our planet. Rome did not rely on a single aqueduct, it built 11. This was not a display of imperial excess, but a profound strategy of survival. Each aqueduct tapped a different spring in the surrounding hills, traversing a unique path into the city. If a landslide blocked one channel or an enemy sabotaged another, the remaining 9 could still deliver enough water to prevent a crisis. This was the power of decentralization, a principle woven into the fabric of ancient water wisdom. Across the Persian plateau, this concept reached its purest expression. A single city might be sustained by dozens of independent Qanats, each a self-contained underground river flowing from its own mountain source. The failure of one tunnel due to a collapse or seismic shift meant a loss of water for its specific village or district, but never a catastrophic collapse for the entire region. The system had no central brain to attack, no vital artery to sever. Resilience was distributed like roots spreading deep and wide, making the whole network incredibly difficult to kill. Contrast this with the anatomical blueprint of a modern metropolis. We have engineered for peak efficiency, which often means centralization. One massive river provides the source. One sprawling treatment plant purifies it for millions. A single primary pipeline corridor might carry this lifeline into the urban core. We have created hydrological hearts and aortas of astonishing scale. But this engineering marvel contains a terrifying vulnerability. It creates what experts call a single point of failure. A major contamination event at the central plant could taint the entire city's supply. A rupture in that primary pipeline corridor could cut off water to whole sectors for days. A cyber attack targeting the centralized control systems could throw the entire operation into chaos. Our quest for streamlined efficiency has, in many cases, traded distributed resilience for concentrated risk. We have built water systems that resemble a mighty oak tree, impressive but vulnerable to a single strike at its trunk, rather than a field of grasses where the loss of one stem means nothing to the health of the meadow. This ancient lesson of decentralization is now echoing in the most forward-thinking corners of modern urban design. The movement is not about abandoning our centralized plants, but about supplementing them with a mosaic of local, resilient solutions. It is the philosophy behind distributed rainwater harvesting, where individual homes, schools, and office buildings capture rainfall from their own roofs, storing it in cisterns for irrigation or even purified for non-potable uses. This simple act takes pressure off the municipal supply during droughts and reduces the stormwater flooding our overwhelmed drains. It is the logic of greywater recycling systems, which filter and reuse water from showers and sinks for flushing toilets or watering gardens, effectively creating a second, localized water loop within a single building. These are not merely conservation measures, they are architectural expressions of redundancy. A neighborhood with widespread rainwater harvesting is not helpless if a main breaks. A building with greywater recycling can maintain its sanitation even if the city supply is temporarily interrupted. What the ancients understood intuitively, we are now relearning through necessity. Decentralization is not about going backward, but about building smarter layers of security. It is the difference between having one enormous bank vault and having your savings wisely distributed in multiple, secure forms. The Roman aqueducts and the Persian Qanats teach us that true security lies in multiplicity, in having many independent paths to a vital resource. This principle transforms our relationship with infrastructure from one of passive consumption to one of active participation. When every rooftop can become a catchment and every building can have its own secondary water cycle, the community itself becomes part of the resilient network, just as the villages along each Qanat were its guardians. The future of water security may not lie in building one bigger, more centralized plant, but in cultivating 10,000 smaller, smarter sources, weaving the ancient wisdom of distributed resilience into the very fabric of our modern lives. The resilience of these systems was not a happy accident. It was a direct result of their intimate dialogue with the sky. Ancient engineers did not design for an abstract average climate. They built for the specific, often brutal, realities of their home. Their blueprints were born from a deep, generational observation of local weather patterns, of when the rains would come with fury and when the earth would bake in silence. This hyper-local focus created infrastructure that was inherently adaptive, bending with the climate rather than breaking against it. In the deserts of Persia and the Middle East, where water was a fleeting treasure, every design choice centered on capture and conservation. The Qanat, tunneling deep underground, was a direct answer to scorching surface heat and relentless evaporation. It was a way to hide water from the sun. Massive cisterns, carved into bedrock or lined with waterproof plaster, were climate-adapted banks, storing the bounty of rare storms to be rationed through years of drought. The architecture itself became a tool for climate survival. Conversely, in the monsoon-drenched landscapes of Southeast Asia, like at Angkor, the primary threat was not scarcity but overwhelming surplus. Their monumental barrays and sprawling canal networks were climate release valves. They were designed to gracefully absorb the violent, seasonal deluge, transforming a destructive force into a productive one by storing it for the long dry season. The system was not fighting the monsoon, it was partnering with it, using its immense energy to fill the reservoirs that would later feed the kingdom. This stands in stark contrast to a common pitfall of modern, globalized engineering, the one-size-fits-all solution. We have developed incredibly effective standardized materials and techniques, concrete pipes, centralized treatment plants, massive dam designs that are often deployed across wildly different climatic zones. A stormwater management system designed for the gentle rains of one region can be utterly overwhelmed by the torrential downpours of another. Irrigation methods perfect for a temperate climate can waste shocking amounts of water in an arid one. For decades, this standardized approach worked well enough within a relatively stable climate band, but it built in a dangerous rigidity. As climate patterns now shift, bringing more intense droughts, heavier rainfall, and greater unpredictability, these maladapted systems are being pushed to their breaking points. The ancient emphasis on context-specific design is no longer a historical curiosity. It is an urgent imperative. Their work teaches us that climate resilience cannot be an add-on or a retrofit. It must be the foundational principle, baked into the very blueprint. It asks us to look at our own landscapes with fresh eyes, not to impose a universal template, but to listen and design for the unique rhythm of rain, sun, and soil right where we stand. The silent water flowing through an aqueduct channel was not a self-regulating miracle. It was the product of a powerful, often overlooked social invention. The most brilliant engineering in the world crumbles without a society committed to its care. Ancient civilizations understood this implicitly, building not just physical infrastructure, but the socio-political frameworks to sustain it. In Rome, this responsibility was etched into the very hierarchy of the state. The water supply was not managed by a distant, anonymous bureaucracy, but by a single, prestigious official appointed directly by the emperor, the curator aquarum. This was a position of immense honor and grave accountability. The curator commanded a small army of skilled public slaves, the aquarii, who patrolled the channels, cleared blockages, and repaired cracks. He had legal authority to protect the aqueduct's right-of-way, preventing encroachment or pollution of the sacred springs. The system's longevity was guaranteed not by the stone alone, but by this clear chain of command, where a named individual bore ultimate responsibility for the health of the city's aquatic heart. This principle of clear, vested responsibility was mirrored in the communal world of the Qanat. Here, the law was not imperial but customary and fiercely local. The water from a single Qanat was divided into precise time shares, often measured by the shadow of a sundial or the burning of a specific incense stick. A farmer might own the right to the full flow for 1 day every 2 weeks. This intricate system of water rights was recorded and respected for generations. Crucially, maintenance duties were tied directly to these shares. The owner of a larger share of water carried a proportionally larger share of the labor or cost for cleaning and repairing the tunnel. This created a perfect alignment of incentive. If you benefited from the system, you were legally and socially obligated to maintain it. The caretaker, the mukani, was a respected expert, his knowledge passed from father to son, ensuring the continuity of care across centuries. The community itself was the steward, bound together by a common dependence on the hidden river beneath their feet. Now, place that model of clear, long-term accountability next to the reality of modern infrastructure management. Too often, our systems suffer from political short-termism. Water mains and treatment plants are capital projects, celebrated with ribbon cuttings by one administration. But the decades of steady, unglamorous, and costly maintenance required to keep them functioning fall to future administrations with different budgets and priorities. This disconnect invites neglect. Funding is diverted to more visible, vote-winning initiatives, while the essential, invisible work of upkeep is deferred. The problem is compounded by fragmentation. In a single metropolitan area, drinking water, stormwater, and wastewater might be managed by 3 separate agencies or even private contractors with little coordination. This siloed approach makes holistic, long-range planning nearly impossible. A decision by one department can create a costly problem for another, with no single entity held accountable for the entire water cycle. We have, in many cases, engineered the social responsibility out of the system, replacing the curator aquarum with a diffuse, shifting cloud of committees, contracts, and political cycles. The ancient lesson is stark. They invested in the caretaker as diligently as they invested in the canal. They designed governance structures with timelines that matched the infrastructure's lifespan, not the electoral calendar. They recognized that the mortar binding the stones was important, but the social contract binding the community to the resource was what truly made it eternal. This raises a final, pivotal question. If we were to rebuild our relationship with water today, guided by these 5 ancient principles, what would that world actually look like? The stone arch of an aqueduct represents an economic philosophy as much as an engineering one. To build a Qanat, a community would invest not just money, but the labor of an entire generation, digging a tunnel by hand for miles through rock and soil, with no guarantee they would live to see the first drop of water emerge at the other end. They were not building for themselves, but for their great-grandchildren. The payoff was not measured in quarterly profits or annual returns, but in the unbroken green stripe of orchards that would flourish for 500 years, in the city that could grow and thrive because its water was guaranteed. This was an economy of permanence where the true cost was calculated over centuries, and the ultimate benefit was civilizational survival. They internalized the long term, bearing the immense upfront burden to secure a future of abundance. The financial logic was simple, though profound. Pay an enormous cost once in sweat and stone, and then reap a nearly free dividend of water, year after year, century after century, with only minimal upkeep. This created a foundational stability that allowed agriculture, trade, and culture to flourish. The aqueduct was not an expense, it was the bedrock of an empire's economy. Now hold that multi-generational ledger in your mind and look at the standard spreadsheet of a modern infrastructure project. The driving question is too often, what is the lowest initial bid? We prioritize shaving dollars from the construction budget today, even if it means choosing cheaper materials that will corrode faster or designs that demand more energy to operate. This is the tyranny of short-term cost accounting. We save a little money now, but we commit our children to a future of exponentially higher expenses, constant repairs, and vulnerable systems. We externalize the long-term costs, leaving them for future taxpayers and ratepayers to solve. The ancient model turns this logic on its head. It challenges our very definition of efficiency. Is it truly efficient to build a treatment plant that costs less to construct but consumes a small city's worth of electricity every year to run? Is it efficient to lay pipes that need replacing every 50 years instead of every 500? Their calculus measured efficiency in lifetimes of reliable service, not in upfront capital savings. This is not merely an historical footnote, it is an urgent economic rethink. When we value only the immediate price tag, we build disposable infrastructure. When we value permanence, we build legacies. The quiet water of a 3,000-year-old Qanat asks us a piercing question about our own priorities. Are we investors in the future or merely consumers of the present? The economic logic of permanence is not a relic, it is being revived in steel and glass. Around the world, a quiet revolution is underway, one that does not see ancient wisdom and modern technology as opposites, but as essential partners. This is not a return to the past, but a thoughtful fusion where timeless principles guide our most advanced tools toward a more resilient future. In the sun-drenched city of Masdar in the United Arab Emirates, architects looked back 1,000 years to cool a modern metropolis. They studied the ancient wind catchers of Persia, tall, chimney-like towers that captured prevailing breezes and funneled them down into buildings, creating natural ventilation long before the invention of air conditioning. In Masdar, this principle was reimagined. A single, colossal wind tower stands at the city's heart, passively drawing cool air down to a shaded public plaza, while the narrow, carefully oriented streets themselves are designed to create cooling wind currents, drastically reducing the energy needed for climate control. It is ancient biomimicry realized with cutting-edge computational fluid dynamics and modern materials. Similarly, the concept of the Qanat is finding new life. Engineers are now designing buildings that use buried earth tubes, pipes running through the cool, stable temperature of the ground to precondition incoming air. Just as the Qanat brought cool water through the desert, these tubes bring cool air into a structure with minimal electrical input, blending an ancient understanding of geothermal mass with contemporary HVAC design. This fusion extends far beyond cooling. For wastewater treatment, the modern answer is increasingly not more concrete and chlorine, but constructed wetlands. Cities like Arcata, California, have pioneered this approach, channeling treated wastewater into a series of shallow, human-made marshes. Here, sunlight, reeds, bulrushes, and microbial communities native to the wetlands perform the final stage of purification. The plants absorb excess nutrients, the microorganisms break down remaining impurities, and the water leaves the system clear enough to support wildlife and even re-enter local waterways. This method directly echoes the Romans' use of fish ponds and the natural filtration of stepwells, leveraging entire ecosystems as living, breathing, self-maintaining treatment facilities. It achieves high-quality results with significantly lower energy and chemical use, proving that sometimes the most advanced solution is to thoughtfully assist a natural process. Perhaps the most widespread adoption of this ancient ethos is the movement known as green infrastructure. This is the conscious use of plants, soils, and natural landscapes to manage water where it falls. It means replacing impermeable asphalt with permeable pavers that allow rain to seep into the earth. It means building green roofs where a layer of soil and vegetation on top of a building absorbs rainfall, reduces runoff, and provides insulation. It means planting rain gardens, shallow depressions filled with native plants, in urban neighborhoods to capture and filter stormwater from streets and rooftops. Every one of these techniques is a direct descendant of the ancient philosophy seen at Angkor and Petra. Instead of viewing stormwater as a waste product to be rushed away in pipes, green infrastructure sees it as a resource to be captured, cleaned, and used to recharge the local aquifer. It turns the city itself into a sponge, much like the Nabateans turned their canyon into a catchment. This approach solves multiple problems at once, reducing flooding, cutting treatment costs, replenishing groundwater, cooling urban heat islands, and creating pockets of biodiversity. It is a holistic, systemic way of thinking that our ancestors would instantly recognize. The goal of this modern movement is not to tear down our treatment plants or disable our pumps. It is to create a smarter, more layered system. Imagine a city where a centralized plant handles the core supply, but where every park is also a rainwater reservoir, every building roof cools itself and harvests water, and every neighborhood wetland polishes wastewater. This is the synergistic fusion, a resilient mesh where high-tech and ancient wisdom work in concert. The ancient principles provide the compass, pointing toward harmony with natural forces, passive design, and multi-functional resilience. Our modern technology provides the tools, the materials, and the precision to implement these ideas at scale and in new ways. It is the marriage of the long view with incredible capability, suggesting that the most promising path forward may not be straight ahead, but one that thoughtfully circles back to gather the profound wisdom left along the way. Our pressurized pipes deliver instant, abundant water at the turn of a handle, a miracle of convenience our ancestors could scarcely fathom. We command volume and control, summoning hot showers and filling swimming pools with a thoughtless ease. This is the undeniable triumph of modern engineering, a liberation from daily drudgery that has improved health and expanded human possibility. Yet this very triumph contains a quiet paradox. In gaining total control, we surrendered something vital, our connection to the source. We traded a relationship for a transaction. The ancient systems demanded engagement. You walked to the stepwell, felt its cool air, drew your water, and in that act you understood its limits and its preciousness. You knew the Mukani who cared for the Qanat, and your share of water was tied to your share of the labor. Today, water is a utility, an abstract commodity delivered by an invisible network. We are consumers, not participants. This disconnection has a cost. When a resource is out of sight and mind, stewardship withers. We are no longer partners in the water cycle, we are its end users. The system asks nothing of us but payment, and in return, we feel no responsibility for its health. This is the first trade-off, convenience for consciousness. We also gained immense volume but lost inherent sustainability. The ancient model was circular by design. The water from the stepwell recharged the aquifer. The Qanat's flow maintained the tunnel. The system's operations were powered by gravity and sunlight, its materials drawn from the local earth. Our modern model is largely linear. We extract, we treat with energy-intensive processes and industrial chemicals. We consume, and we treat again before discharging. Each step relies on external power and complex supply chains. We solved the problem of scale, but in doing so, we created new problems of energy dependence and chemical byproducts. The advancement gave us more water, but made the system itself more fragile, more vulnerable to shocks far beyond the watershed. This leads to the final, and perhaps most profound, trade-off. We gained spectacular efficiency but sacrificed distributed resilience. The Roman 11 aqueducts and Persia's web of Qanats were networks of redundancy, difficult to cripple entirely. Our centralized marvels are pinnacles of efficiency, but they create single points of catastrophic failure. A cyber attack on a control system, a toxic spill upstream, or a prolonged grid failure can threaten an entire city's supply in a way an ancient engineer would find bafflingly risky. We streamlined the path of water, but in the process we narrowed our own options. This forces a philosophical reckoning. Does technological advancement always mean improvement, or can progress sometimes be a narrowing, a foreclosure of simpler, more resilient paths in the pursuit of a single, dominant solution? The history of water reveals that innovation is not a straight, ascending line where the new permanently replaces the old. It is more like a web or a spiral where old ideas, born from deep observation and harmony, can illuminate new futures. The aqueduct is not obsolete, it is a teacher. Its silent lesson is that the most sophisticated system might be the one that needs the least from us and gives the most back to the world it serves. The quiet flow of an aqueduct versus the roar of a pumping station presents more than a difference in sound. It reveals a fundamental gap in performance. To truly grasp the distance between these two worlds, we can create a simple, conceptual scorecard, measuring them side by side across the very metrics that define a sustainable future. First, energy use. The ancient column here is absolute zero. A Roman aqueduct with its meticulously calculated gradient of just 0.1% required no external power. Its energy source was gravity, a planetary constant. The modern equivalent, a regional water pumping station, is a ravenous beast of consumption. A single large facility can easily demand tens of megawatts of electricity, often drawn from fossil fuels, simply to push water against that same force of gravity. This is not a minor operational detail. It is the foundational difference between a system that lives within its means and one that must constantly be fed. Second, water loss. Ancient systems were masters of conservation. The underground Qanat lost virtually nothing to evaporation, its sealed tunnels ensuring nearly every drop from the mountain spring reached the desert oasis. Leaks, when they occurred, were local and visible. Modern networks, by contrast, hemorrhage silently. In countless cities, aging and neglected pipes lose between 20 and 40% of all treated water into the surrounding earth before it ever reaches a home. This represents a catastrophic double waste, the loss of the resource itself and all the energy used to purify and pump it. Longevity provides the most staggering contrast. The Qanats of Qanat have been in continuous operation for nearly 3,000 years. The concrete of Roman harbors hardens with the centuries. These systems were built as legacies with timelines measured in civilizations. The expected service life of a modern ductile iron water main, under ideal conditions, is about 100 years. Many in our oldest cities are already well past this mark, leading to an accelerating cycle of breaks and emergency repairs. We are not building for the ages, we are installing for the foreseeable future. Environmental impact tells a story of divergence. Ancient infrastructure was often regenerative. The Qanat created a ribbon of green oases across the desert, supporting biodiversity. The Stepwell actively recharged the aquifer beneath it. Their presence improved the local ecology. Too often, our large-scale projects have the opposite effect. Massive dams flood valleys and disrupt river ecosystems for hundreds of miles. Concrete-lined channels turn living streams into sterile drains. Our treatment processes create chemical byproducts. The ancient model asked how the system could heal the land, while the modern one has often asked how the land could bear the system. Finally, social cohesion. The public fountain and the stepwell were hubs of community life, places where people gathered, talked, and developed a shared sense of guardianship over their water source. This fostered a culture of direct stewardship. Today, our water arrives through an anonymous pipe. Our relationship is transactional, defined by a monthly bill and a distant, often fragmented bureaucracy. The system is professionally managed, but the vital layer of communal care and connection has largely evaporated. This side-by-side view is not an argument to abandon modern treatment or return to a pre-industrial world. Public health benefits of modern sanitation are non-negotiable. Instead, this comparison reveals a profound misalignment in our priorities. We have optimized brilliantly for volume, convenience, and immediate cost, but we have consistently undervalued longevity, resilience, and ecological harmony. The scorecard suggests that by the most critical measures of true sustainability, the systems engineered with stone and patience frequently outperform those built with steel and haste. They achieved a different kind of efficiency, one where the greatest output was not gallons per minute, but centuries of reliable service. This tangible gap forces a pivotal question. If these ancient principles scored so highly, why did we ever leave them behind? The answer lies not in a failure of engineering, but in a seismic shift in how we view the world itself. The comparison we have just drawn might seem to invite a straightforward conclusion that the past was simply better. But history is rarely that simple, and to learn from it, we must first clear away the most common objections. A powerful counterargument is scale. Ancient cities were smaller, the thinking goes, so of course their simpler systems worked. Yet Rome, at its peak, was a metropolis of around 1 million inhabitants, a size that rivals many major modern cities. Its 11 aqueducts delivered a staggering volume of water, achieving a per capita availability that modern cities facing scarcity can only dream of. They scaled not with brute force, but with elegant multiplication, building parallel, redundant lines from multiple sources. The principle was not about serving a tiny village, but about designing a network that could grow and adapt without collapsing under its own complexity. Another frequent point is technological limitation. They could not possibly deliver pressurized water to the 40th floor of a skyscraper, and that is true. But this critique misses the point entirely. The goal is not to transplant a 2,000-year-old pipe into a modern high-rise. It is to recognize that for the core, life-sustaining functions of a city, for public health, sanitation, and equitable access, their systems achieved a level of efficiency and resilience that our own often lack. We have advanced spectacularly in delivering water vertically, but we have regressed in securing it sustainably. Their genius was in mastering the fundamentals of conveyance and storage with minimal external inputs, a principle that remains critically relevant for the foundational layer of any water system, regardless of what we build on top. Then there is the matter of materials, most notably the Roman use of lead pipes. It is a serious point, and one that should not be glossed over. The Romans did use lead, known as plumbum, for some of their distribution lines, and we now understand the severe health consequences. However, to dismiss their entire hydraulic philosophy based on this one element is to ignore the nuance of their practice. They were not blindly poisoning themselves. Historical records indicate a sophisticated awareness of water quality. Engineers would taste water from new sources, noting its clarity, temperature, and flavor as indicators of purity. They preferred water from specific clean springs and went to great lengths to protect those sources. The lead issue reveals a gap in their scientific knowledge, not a failure of their systemic thinking. In fact, it underscores a key difference. When we discover a flaw in a modern material, like a chemical leaching from a pipe, the solution is often another complex technological fix. When a section of aqueduct channel cracked, the solution was locally sourced stone and mortar. One system creates dependency on a global industrial chain for fixes, the other on local knowledge and materials. The purpose of this journey is not to paint the past as a utopia free of error. It was not. It is to identify the transferable principles that shone through despite the limitations of their era. Principles like passive design, ecological integration, distributed resilience, and long-term custodianship. These are not outdated concepts. They are a timeless form of intelligence that our current paradigm, obsessed with short-term efficiency and control, has largely marginalized. We built a world that runs on forced water, and now we are facing the consequences of that force. The ancient blueprint offers a different question. Not how hard can we push, but how wisely can we guide? The answer to that question may not lie in any single technology, but in a shift of perspective, one that reconnects us to the most elemental partnership of all, our place within the water cycle itself. A cracked stone in an aqueduct channel was not a catastrophe, it was a Tuesday. The caretaker would inspect the damage, gather a few blocks of local limestone, mix a batch of mortar from the nearby quarry, and set to work. Within days, the flow was restored, the repair blending seamlessly into the original structure. This was possible because the system was designed with its own future care in mind. The vertical shafts of a Qanat, spaced every 50 meters or so, were not merely for digging. They were access points for eternity. If a tunnel section collapsed, workers could descend the nearest shaft, clear the debris, and rebuild the walls using the same clay tiles that lined the entire passage. The repair was local, using local skills and local materials, and it did not require shutting down the entire underground river. The system's architecture anticipated failure and provided a simple, elegant path to restoration. It was infrastructure built with its own maintenance manual etched into its form. Now, contrast this with the reality of a broken water main under a modern city street. The rupture might not be discovered until water bubbles up through the asphalt, causing traffic chaos. Then begins the monumental effort. Crews must mobilize heavy excavation equipment to dig through layers of pavement, soil, and other buried utilities to even reach the broken pipe. The damaged section, made of specialized ductile iron or PVC, cannot be patched with a handful of local materials. It must be cut out and replaced with an exact matching piece, ordered from a distant manufacturer. The repair is a major logistical event requiring specialized technicians, traffic control, and days of disruption, all for a single failure in a vast hidden network. The ancient philosophy was one of modularity and repairability. They built in access, they standardized simple components, and they ensured the knowledge and tools for repair were held within the community that depended on the system. The modern approach, prioritizing speed of initial installation and minimal upfront cost, often creates monuments to inaccessibility. We bury our vital arteries deep, seal them in concrete, and make them from materials that require industrial supply chains to mend. This is the difference between designing for a life cycle and designing for an installation. The ancients asked, how can we fix this when it eventually wears? We too often ask, how cheaply can we put this in the ground right now? The consequence is written in the staggering costs of our infrastructure backlog, the constant emergency repairs, and the weeks of service interruptions. Their systems were like a well-made wooden cabinet where a scratched panel can be sanded and refinished by the owner. Ours are like a complex digital device where a single failed component requires sending the entire unit back to a specialized factory, leaving you without a critical tool for weeks. The lesson here is not about the superiority of stone over plastic, but about the wisdom of designing for care. A system that is easy to fix is a system that will last. It invites stewardship because the act of repair is within reach. When maintenance becomes a Herculean, expensive ordeal, it gets deferred, and small problems metastasize into systemic collapse. The quiet, recurring repairs on the aqueduct were a sign of its health, a ritual of preservation. The explosive, disruptive repair of a water main is a symptom of a design that forgot its own future. The stone of the aqueduct was not just a building material, it was an act of devotion. For the Romans, the journey of water began with a prayer at the sacred spring, a place protected by the deity fauns. To pollute that source was not merely a civic violation, it was a sacrilege against a divine gift. This worldview was not unique. From the banks of the Ganga in India, revered as a goddess herself, to the ceremonial fountains of ancient China that symbolized cosmic harmony, water was universally seen as a sacred element, a living force intertwined with the spiritual health of the community. This profound reverence was not an abstract belief. It was the most powerful driver of practical, meticulous care. When water is a goddess, you do not let her channel crack. When a spring is a temple, you protect it with laws and with your life. The stunning carvings that cover every inch of a stepwell like Chand Bayori were not mere decoration, they were an architectural hymn. To descend its steps was to move through a sacred text in stone, a daily reminder that this water was a blessing, not a birthright. The public fountain in a Roman plaza was not just a utility, it was public art, a celebration of the nymphs and a testament to civic pride. The infrastructure itself was an object of beauty and cultural meaning, worthy of investment, adornment, and generations of vigilant protection. This cultural driver created a powerful ethical framework for management. The caretaker of the Qanat was not just a technician, he was a guardian of a communal trust. The laws governing water shares were upheld not just by courts, but by a deep-seated cultural consensus that to steal water or neglect the tunnel was to betray your neighbors and offend the natural order. Compare this to the dominant modern paradigm. In our quest for efficiency, we have largely secularized water. We have successfully transformed it into a sanitized, regulated commodity, a chemical formula, H2O, delivered by a meter. This shift was necessary to achieve scale and public health, but it came with an unintended consequence, the erosion of that deeper relationship. When water is merely a utility, its value is reduced to its price per gallon. It becomes something we expect, not something we honor. The pipe is hidden, the treatment plant is industrial, and our interaction is reduced to a faucet and a bill. We have gained convenience, but we have lost the connective tissue of care that bound the community to its source. This is not a call to return to ancient religions, but to recognize a fundamental truth they embodied. The technical challenges of leaks, pollution, and scarcity are symptoms. The root cause is often a crisis of value. We manage poorly what we do not truly cherish. Rekindling a cultural and ethical relationship with water may be the most profound fix of all. It means redesigning our modern systems not just for efficiency, but for engagement. Imagine if our water treatment plants had public viewing galleries and educational centers, transforming them from industrial secrets into temples of modern science. Imagine if every new building project incorporated a beautiful, accessible rainwater feature, making the cycle visible and inviting. It means teaching our children the story of their water, from the distant watershed to the tap, fostering a sense of wonder and responsibility. The ancient world teaches us that the most resilient systems were those wrapped in stories, rituals, and beauty. They understood that to care for water, you must first love it. Our future may depend on relearning that simple, sacred connection. This fusion of ancient reverence and modern capability points toward a tangible blueprint, a vision for a city that learns from both timelines. Picture not a return to the past, but a thoughtful evolution where the wisdom of the aqueduct and the power of the pump finally work in concert. This is the hybrid model, a practical reimagining of our urban landscape guided by a simple, powerful idea. Select the best tool for the job from across all of human history. The goal is not to dismantle our modern water grids, but to recalibrate them, using those 5 ancient principles as a compass to navigate toward true resilience. The foundation of this new old city is layered redundancy, inspired by Rome's 11 aqueducts. The centralized treatment plant remains a vital backbone for core supply and public health. But woven throughout every neighborhood is a second, decentralized network. Here, the ancient cistern principle is reborn in modern form. Every school, every office tower, every apartment complex harvests rainwater from its own roof, storing it in sleek, subsurface tanks. This water is not for drinking, but for flushing toilets, irrigating community gardens, and washing streets. Suddenly, a heavy summer rain is not a burden for the storm drains, but a local resource captured where it falls. This simple act takes immense pressure off the central system during droughts and reduces the polluted runoff that chokes our rivers. It transforms every building from a passive consumer into an active participant in the water cycle. Above these cisterns, the cityscape itself changes. Flat, black tar roofs are replaced by living, breathing green roofs, carpets of hardy sedum and native grasses. These are not just gardens in the sky, they are miniature sponges absorbing rainfall, slowing its rush to the gutters and cooling the building beneath. Along the streets, concrete curbs give way to bioswales, gently sloped channels filled with gravel and water-loving plants. When a storm hits, these bioswales do exactly what Angkor's canals did. They capture the initial surge, filter out pollutants as the water percolates down, and direct the cleansed overflow slowly toward the groundwater or a nearby park pond. This is green infrastructure, a direct descendant of ancient hydrological wisdom, turning the city into a living catchment system that manages water with biology rather than just concrete. In new developments, especially those on sloping land, the ancient mastery of gravity is reclaimed as a primary design feature. Instead of relying solely on pumps to push water uphill, community planners lay out neighborhoods to harness the land's natural contours. Water towers and storage reservoirs are placed at the highest points, filled by solar-powered pumps during off-peak hours, so that gravity can do the work of distribution for most of the day. This drastically reduces the constant energy demand of the system, creating a quiet, resilient backbone that can keep water flowing even during grid instability. It is a deliberate choice to work with the landscape, not against it, saving enormous amounts of energy for generations to come. This hybrid city does not reject a single piece of modern engineering. It simply asks smarter questions of it. The high-tech desalination plant on the coast still operates, but it runs on renewable energy, and its output is reserved for true potable needs, not for watering lawns. The advanced membrane filters at the treatment plant are used to their fullest potential because the stormwater and greywater loops have already handled so much of the non-potable demand. The system becomes a symphony, not a solo. The centralized grid provides the reliable, safe base note, while the decentralized, nature-based systems provide the adaptable, resilient harmony. This is how we rebuild our relationship with water, not as a single transaction, but as an ongoing, intelligent conversation with the world around us. The compass from the past points clearly toward integration, toward systems that are as much about culture and ecology as they are about engineering. The final step is to ask, who must we become to build this world? A blueprint is meaningless without the builders. The grand vision of a hybrid city, blending ancient resilience with modern technology, does not appear by decree. It is assembled piece by piece through the choices of individuals, the advocacy of communities, and the reimagined priorities of professionals. The good news is that the tools to begin this work are already here, waiting in our hands, our neighborhoods, and our design studios. This is where history stops being a lesson and becomes a manual. For the individual, the most powerful step is also the simplest: reconnect your home to the water cycle. This does not require a major renovation. A rain barrel placed beneath a downspout is a miniature cistern, a personal barrage that captures the sky's gift for your garden. It is a quiet act of participation, a declaration that the rain falling on your roof is a resource, not a nuisance. For those ready to go further, a basic greywater system can redirect water from your washing machine or shower to irrigate landscaping. These are not fringe technologies, they are practical applications of the ancient principle of reuse. turning a single flow of water into multiple services. Every gallon harvested or recycled is a gallon that does not need to be pumped from a distant river or strained from a depleted aquifer. It is a direct reduction in your water footprint and a small boost to your household's resilience. But individual action finds its true power in community. This is where the ancient model of shared stewardship comes alive. Neighborhood associations and civic groups can become powerful advocates for green infrastructure. Imagine petitioning your city council to replace a paved alley with permeable pavers, or to transform a vacant lot into a rain garden that beautifies the block while managing stormwater. Community-organized water audits are another potent tool. Using simple leak detection tablets or even just monitoring the water meter, a neighborhood can identify hidden losses in their own buildings and pressure the local utility to fix public line breaks faster. This collective voice demands accountability, turning residents from passive ratepayers into active guardians of their local water system, much like the villagers who maintained their Qanat. For urban planners and city officials, the mandate is to learn from the land itself, as the builders of Petra and Angkor did. Before sketching the first street on a new development, study the ancient hydrology of the site. Where did the water naturally flow? Where did it pool? Use that historical memory, often visible in old maps or even the lay of the land, to inform the modern plan. Instead of flattening a hillside and piping all the water away, design the community to work with those natural channels. Preserve wetlands as natural treatment areas. Zone for clustered green spaces that double as floodwater retention basins. This is not nostalgia, it is sophisticated risk management that saves enormous costs on concrete drainage and future disaster recovery. Finally, for the engineers and architects who physically shape our world, the challenge is a philosophical shift in the design brief. When presented with a water conveyance problem, the first question should not default to, what is the most powerful pump we can install? It should be, how can gravity do this work for us? Can we site storage tanks at a higher elevation? Can we use the natural slope of the land to move water through constructed wetlands for treatment? Prioritizing passive, gravity-based solutions wherever feasible is not a rejection of innovation. It is the highest form of it, creating systems that are inherently cheaper to operate and more reliable in a crisis. It means choosing materials not just for their initial cost, but for their longevity and repairability, asking how a future caretaker will mend what we build today. These steps, from the backyard rain barrel to the citywide master plan, are threads in the same tapestry. They all weave toward a single outcome: a water culture that values wisdom over waste, resilience over rigidity, and stewardship over short-term consumption. The ancients left us more than ruins, they left us a compass. It points toward a future where our infrastructure is not a war against nature, but a lasting partnership with it. The path forward begins with a simple choice: to see the water around us not as a problem to be managed, but as a legacy to be honored, one practical step at a time. The final lesson from these silent waterways is not a relic but a revelation. Our ancestors achieved what we now struggle to maintain, not through superior force but through profound harmony. They viewed water as a sacred thread in the fabric of life, a partner in a delicate dance with the land. Their engineering was an act of conversation with the world, not a declaration of dominance. In every stone of an aqueduct, every hand-dug meter of a Qanat, they encoded a wisdom we are now desperate to reclaim, the wisdom of limits, of patience, and of reciprocity. We stand at a crossroads defined by our own creations, facing systems that are efficient yet fragile, powerful yet perilously dependent. The ancient blueprint does not ask us to abandon our technology, but to temper it with their timeless intelligence. It invites us to design cities that breathe like forests, to build networks that heal as they flow, and to cultivate a culture that sees water not as a commodity, but as a covenant with the future. Their legacy is a compass pointing toward a different kind of advancement, one measured not in gallons pumped per minute, but in centuries of sustained abundance. The path forward is clear. We must learn to speak the old language of gravity and stone, of community and care, and translate it into the materials and dreams of our time. Let us build not just for ourselves, but for the quiet, flowing wisdom of the ages yet to come. That silent conversation across centuries still flows if we learn how to listen. It speaks not in the language of complex machinery, but in the quiet logic of harmony, patience, and profound respect. We have walked the length of an aqueduct and descended the steps of a stepwell, tracing a blueprint for resilience written in stone and soil. This journey reveals a truth that transcends plumbing. The most profound solutions are not always the most technologically complex. Often, they are elegantly simple, inherently sustainable, and rooted in a deep understanding of our place within the natural world. It is a wisdom that asks us to see infrastructure not as a barrier against nature, but as a bridge woven from it. So, what does this mean for us here and now, in a world of smart cities and digital grids? The invitation is to look around with new eyes. This ancient wisdom is not locked in the past. It is a lens through which we can reimagine the very fabric of our modern lives. It challenges the assumption that newer is always better and that complexity equals advancement. Think of the spaces you inhabit. Could the building you live in work more like a stepwell, capturing and cleansing rainwater? Could your neighborhood manage stormwater with a beautiful, functional rain garden instead of an anonymous concrete drain? Could your city's energy grid find inspiration in the gravity-fed aqueduct, prioritizing passive, low-energy solutions that endure? The principles are transferable, waiting to be applied to how we grow food, design transportation, and even structure our communities. It is about shifting from a mindset of consumption and control to one of stewardship and symbiosis. This is where the conversation continues and where your voice becomes part of the flow. What aspects of your own life or your community could be reimagined with this ancient, yet urgently modern wisdom? Have you seen inspiring examples of this fusion where you live? Share your thoughts, your discoveries, and your questions in the comments below. Let's build a reservoir of ideas together. If this exploration of hidden history and its powerful lessons for our future resonated with you, please consider subscribing. There are countless more mysteries woven into the fabric of our past, each holding insights for the world we are building today. Together, we can channel this flowing stream of knowledge, from the silent aqueducts to the smart cities of tomorrow, into a more resilient, sustainable, and harmonious future.